The last thing I saw before I drove away from that house was the curtain moving, not swinging in the wind, not falling back into place. Someone inside was slowly pulling it closed while watching me. And to this day, I genuinely believe that if I had stepped inside that house for even a few seconds, I probably wouldn't have come back out. A couple years ago, I was trying to buy a used car for my son's 18th birthday. Nothing fancy, just something reliable enough to get him to school and work without breaking down every other week. I searched everywhere: dealership websites, Facebook Marketplace, cars.com, even eBay Motors. Everything was overpriced or had insane mileage. Then I found this listing on Craigslist. It was a 2003 Toyota Camry, 67,000 miles, no accidents, clean title, only $3,500. Honestly, it looked way too good to be real. The seller claimed he needed quick cash because he was moving out of state. The photos looked legitimate, the car looked clean, no visible damage, and the seller only lived around 15 minutes away from me. I called the number listed. A man answered after 2 rings. His voice was calm, older guy, sounded completely normal. He introduced himself as Walter. He told me the car ran perfectly and said a few other people were interested already, so if I wanted it, I should come that same afternoon. That should have been my first warning sign. I grabbed the cash anyway. The address led me farther out of town than I expected. Eventually, the paved roads turned into these narrow gravel roads surrounded by woods and open fields. The property itself sat isolated behind a long dirt driveway. There was a small 1-story house, an old shed, and a detached garage with the door halfway open. But the Camry wasn't there. Actually, there were no cars there at all, except for this rusted pickup truck parked near the garage. I remember sitting in my car thinking maybe I had the wrong address, but the mailbox numbers matched perfectly. I got out and walked toward the garage first. The inside was strange. There were car parts everywhere, piles of tires, doors ripped off different vehicles, tools scattered all over the floor. It looked less like a mechanic's garage and more like someone had been dismantling cars piece by piece. And the weirdest part was how quiet everything was. No radio, no dogs barking, no movement, just silence. I called out for Walter a couple times but got no response. So I walked to the front door and knocked. Nothing. I waited maybe a minute and knocked again. Still nothing. At that point I was annoyed more than anything else. I figured maybe the guy stepped out for a second. Then I called his phone, and that's when my stomach dropped because I heard a ringtone coming from inside the house. Not muffled either. Loud enough that he had to be right there. I remember standing on that porch completely confused. If he was home, why wasn't he answering? After another minute, I walked over to one of the side windows and looked inside. The house was dark, like unnaturally dark for the middle of the afternoon. I could barely make out a dining table and some furniture covered in sheets. But near the back of the house, I saw someone standing completely still by the rear door, just staring outside. I felt relieved for a second. I figured the guy was old or hard of hearing or something, so I knocked on the window. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even turn its head. That's when this horrible feeling started creeping up my spine. I walked around toward the backyard. The grass back there was overgrown, almost up to my knees. There was junk everywhere, broken furniture, rusted tools, pieces of metal sticking out of the dirt, and standing behind the back door was the figure. Closer now. Close enough for me to finally understand what I was looking at. It wasn't a person, at least, not anymore. It looked human, but something about it was horribly wrong. Its skin looked stiff and grayish. The eyes were sunken deep into the face. Its mouth hung slightly open like it had been frozen mid-sentence. And the smell, I can still remember the smell, like chemicals mixed with something rotten. For a second, my brain literally couldn't process what I was seeing. Then I noticed metal wiring near the neck and shoulders. That thing had been mounted there, displayed, like some kind of decoration. I ran immediately. I don't even remember turning around. My body just reacted on instinct. I sprinted back toward my car so fast I nearly slipped in the dirt. And right before I got inside, I looked back at the house one last time. The window I had looked through earlier was different now. The blinds had been closed, but 2 of them were bent apart slightly. Someone inside the house was peeking through them, watching me leave. I threw the car into reverse and flew down that dirt road faster than I probably ever drove in my life. I kept checking my rearview mirror, expecting headlights behind me the entire drive home. I never reported it. And honestly, I regret that. But part of me was terrified that whoever lived there knew my face, my car, maybe even where I lived from the phone number. To this day, I still think about all those car parts in the garage. There never was a Toyota Camry. No car, no moving sale, no reason for me to be there. Just a fake listing designed to lure someone onto that property. And sometimes late at night, I still wonder how many other people answered that ad before me. A month ago, I moved into my first apartment alone. I was 22, broke, and trying to furnish the place as cheaply as possible. So like most people my age, I started searching Craigslist for used furniture. That's when I found the couch. The listing almost looked too perfect. The couch was modern, clean, barely used, and the price was unbelievably low. Honestly, lower than it should have been. At first I thought it was fake, but the seller had uploaded multiple photos from different angles, and everything looked normal enough. The only thing that felt strange was the email attached to the post, mexicanpoppy66@hotmail.com. I remember staring at the name for a second longer than I normally would. Something about it just felt off. Still, I needed a couch, so I emailed him an offer, and less than 5 minutes later, he responded. He accepted immediately. No negotiating, no questions, just, "Sounds good, send me your address." The second I read that, my stomach tightened. I didn't like the idea of some random guy from Craigslist knowing where I lived, especially since I had just moved in alone, so I told him I'd rather come pick it up myself. But instead of agreeing, he kept insisting that he deliver it personally. At first he sounded polite, then pushy. Every reply became more aggressive about wanting my address. That's when I stopped responding altogether. I figured the couch wasn't worth the weird feeling I was getting. But the next day, I got another email from him. This time, he sent his address. No explanation, just the address, and a message saying the couch was still available. I should have ignored it. Honestly, every part of me was telling me not to go. But the place was only about 15 minutes away, and the deal still seemed amazing. So eventually, against my better judgment, I drove there. The neighborhood itself looked normal. Quiet street, small houses, kids' bikes and driveways. But his house stood out immediately. It was smaller than the others, older, and weirdly dark, even in the middle of the afternoon. The curtains were completely shut. I remember sitting in my car for a moment, debating whether I should just leave. But before I could decide, the front door opened, and a man stepped out onto the porch. Middle-aged, wearing a faded baseball cap, and smiling way too hard. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that makes you instantly uncomfortable. He waved me inside before I'd even spoken. The second I walked into the house, I regretted it. The air smelled stale, like cigarettes, and something rotten underneath it. And the house was almost completely silent. No TV, no music, nothing. He led me into the living room where the couch was sitting. Immediately, I noticed the pictures online had been misleading. The couch was covered in scratches, stains, and small tears. It looked nothing like the listing photos. I pointed that out, and instead of apologizing, he just kept smiling. Then he offered to lower the price. I told him I wasn't interested anymore, and started heading toward the front door. That's when things changed. As I reached for the doorknob, I suddenly felt his hand land on my shoulder. I froze. His grip was firm, too firm. Then, in this calm, almost whispering voice, he said, "I'll give it to you for free, if you do something for me." I felt sick instantly. I shoved his hand off me and rushed out of the house without saying another word. I got into my car, locked the doors immediately, and drove away. I didn't even look back. I just wanted to get home. But the worst part happened later that night. Around midnight, I was lying in bed watching TV, trying to forget the entire situation, when I heard footsteps outside. Heavy footsteps, slowly climbing the stairs to my porch. At first, I thought maybe it was one of my neighbors. Then I heard my front doorknob jiggle, once, then again. I muted the TV immediately, and in the silence of my apartment, I could hear someone trying to open my front door. I remember my entire body going cold. I crept toward the peephole as quietly as possible and looked outside, but whoever it was had already stepped away. For a second, everything went silent again. Then I heard the gate to my backyard creak open, and slammed shut. That's when I grabbed my phone and called 911. While I was whispering my address to the operator, I suddenly heard movement near my back door. The handle started shaking violently. Someone was trying to get in. I completely panicked and yelled, "The police are coming." The rattling stopped instantly. A second later, I heard the backyard gate swing open again, then slam shut, and after that, nothing. The police searched the area but never found anyone. No fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing. But deep down, I know it was him. There's no doubt in my mind. He must have followed me home after I left his house. Ever since that night, I have barely slept. Every tiny noise outside my apartment wakes me up. And sometimes, late at night, I still think I hear someone touching the doorknob. I should have known something was wrong the moment those guys didn't leave the parking lot. Most Craigslist deals are awkward for maybe 2 minutes. Then everybody goes home. But these guys just sat there in their car, watching us. About 2 years ago, I was trying to buy a used iPhone online because mine had completely died after I dropped it into a sink full of water. I didn't have money for a brand new one, so I started checking Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist every day looking for cheap deals. That's when I found this listing, an iPhone 12 Pro, perfect condition, unlocked, only $200, which honestly should have been a massive red flag. The seller claimed he needed quick money because he was leaving the state the next morning. The photos looked real, and the guy agreed to meet nearby in a public place. I brought my younger cousin Ethan with me because he knew way more about phones than I did. The meeting spot was a 24-hour coffee shop parking lot just off the highway. We got there around 10:30 at night. At first, everything seemed normal. A black Honda Accord pulled into the parking lot a couple minutes later. 2 guys stepped out. Both of them were big, not just tall, intimidating. One of them wore a gray hoodie with the hood pulled over his head, even though it wasn't cold outside. The other guy barely spoke at all. The one in the hoodie handed me the phone. It looked flawless. No cracks, no scratches, nothing suspicious. Ethan took the phone from me and started checking everything. Face ID worked. The speakers worked. The camera looked fine. He even swapped my SIM card into it and tested a phone call. Everything checked out. That's when the guy suddenly said, "Actually, I need $250 for it." I reminded him the listing said $200. Immediately his expression changed. Not angry exactly, just cold, like I'd annoyed him somehow. I lied and told him I only brought $200 cash. In reality, I had more in my wallet. He stared at me for a few seconds before finally taking the money. No handshake, no thanks, nothing. The 2 guys got back into their car without another word. Ethan and I sat in my car for another few minutes setting up the phone. That's when Ethan looked up and quietly said, "Why are they still here?" Their car hadn't moved, the headlights were still on, and both of them were still sitting inside, watching us. I remember getting this weird feeling in my stomach, but I tried brushing it off. Maybe they were checking directions or something. I started driving home, and the second we pulled out of the parking lot, their car pulled out too. At first it didn't seem strange because we were both heading toward the highway, but then every turn I made, they made too. Ethan kept checking behind us. "They're following us." I still remember the way he said it, not joking, not panicking, just completely certain. I tried convincing myself it was coincidence, until I purposely made 3 random turns through a neighborhood I didn't even recognize. They stayed directly behind us the entire time, and they started getting closer. Their headlights filled my mirrors so brightly, I could barely see anything else. My heart started pounding. Ethan told me to drive to a police station, but I didn't know where the nearest one was, and honestly, I was panicking too hard to think straight. I sped up. They sped up too. At one point, they got so close I thought they were going to hit us. That's when I realized something horrifying. Those guys never cared about selling the phone. They wanted my address. I started taking random turns trying to lose them. Running yellow lights, cutting through side streets. Nothing worked. Then we reached a large intersection, just as the light turned red. Cars were already starting to move from the opposite direction, and without even thinking, I floored it. We flew through the intersection while horns exploded around us. Ethan started yelling at me, asking if I was insane, but when I looked in the mirror, the black Accord was stuck behind traffic. For the first time in 15 minutes, they were gone. We took a completely different route home after that. Longer roads, different neighborhoods. By the time we got back, it was almost midnight. I remember laughing nervously with Ethan afterward, trying to convince ourselves we'd overreacted, but deep down, I knew we hadn't. A few hours later, everyone in the house was asleep except me. I was still awake setting up the phone in my room when I heard something outside. 2 car doors shutting. Slowly, I froze. Then I looked through my blinds, and my entire body went cold. The black Accord was parked across the street. No headlights, no engine running, just sitting there in the dark. I immediately ran to wake up my stepdad. I explained everything so fast I could barely breathe. He grabbed an aluminum baseball bat from his closet and stood near the front door while I called 911. Then came the knock. 3 slow hits against the door. Not loud, almost casual. My stepdad yelled for them to leave. One of the men answered from outside, calmly. "We just want the phone back." Something about the way he said it terrified me more than if he'd been screaming. My stepdad told them the police were already coming. There was silence for about 3 seconds. Then another voice said, "If you don't open this door, we'll come in ourselves." I remember backing away from the hallway because suddenly this didn't feel like a robbery anymore. These guys sounded wrong, like they were enjoying it. Then came a loud pop. At first, I didn't even realize it was a gunshot because it was so quiet, but part of the front door exploded inward. My stepdad stumbled backward yelling. The bullet had gone straight through the wood inches from his face. And right after that, we heard someone outside screaming, "Drop the weapon!" Our neighbor across the street happened to be an off-duty sheriff's deputy. He'd seen the car sitting outside and walked over just as the shot was fired. Everything after that happened fast. The 2 men were arrested in our driveway. And the creepiest part? Police later told us the phone was stolen, but there were also several zip ties, duct tape rolls, and gloves found inside their car. To this day, I still believe they followed us home for a reason that had nothing to do with that phone.